Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, KPI Fire, how to quantify impact for your CI project and your program in general. I'm just going to give it just one more minute to get folks they're signing up right now, and so just give everybody just one moment, please. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. A couple others just joined. Um, So let's kick off today's meeting with the agenda. Here's what we're going to talk about today on the agenda. We're going to do a little introduction about myself and the overview of KPI Fire to get you set around what we are, and then we're going to get into talking about begin with the end in mind, right? How do we structure the environment and configure the environment to get the reports and the data that we want to show in terms of the value of our projects and our program, right? So we'll look at the department structure, the financial benefit accounts to see some examples of that. And then we'll look at the specifics for recording benefits. How do we do a single benefit or a 12-month annual benefit over 12 months? And also some non-financial type benefits that we might record. What has this project done? It didn't save any money, but it helped drive a metric or a goal, et cetera. And we'll talk about PPDs or PowerPoint dollars. Right? PowerPoint dollars are, projections by project managers that never come true, and how those can be toxic to your program, right? Which really requires approvals of those numbers. We'll talk about that, and then Q&A. So as we go through this, if you the chat button or the question button on that little webinar box. You can post a question in the chat or the question area. It doesn't matter. I have them both up. I can see if anything comes in. We'll try to address that. And if it pertains to a certain area, I'll try to address it right away, or we'll do it at the end. Okay. All right, so that's what we're up to today. We'll get started here. My background is in continuous improvement. I've been doing this over 30 years. I've led a Baldrige Quality Initiative at Whirlpool Corporation. Been an examiner in the Baldrige process 3 times. Moved to Pitney Bowes to start a Six Sigma initiative at Pitney Bowes and ran it. And one of the key areas and things that we had to do is really prove the value of what we were doing. We knew we were spending a lot in terms of training people and organizing the Six Sigma initiative. But what was the project worth? What were we saving? Be able to roll and report, et cetera. So I've had some experience in that. I'm the VP of Sales at KPI Fire. All right, so that's my background. Let's get in and talk a little bit about KPI Fire. It really starts up here with understanding where you're going and communicating, cascading those goals throughout the organization. One of the key elements of any good continuous improvement effort is that you're focusing the effort on important goals and metrics, et cetera, right? So it's not just slingshot and pick whatever and work on whatever, but we want to focus that effort. The metrics around those is how we measure it, how we record performance. It could be things like defects or cycle time, or it could be things like cost reductions or revenue enhancement. And so we were able to manage those. On the idea portion, we capture ideas around these goals and metrics, and we prioritize those ideas. Which ones do we want to go into project execution? And then finally, we track and report on the value with that middle piece there with our reports and outputs. So this is just general overview. I think I'll give you a sense of what KPI Fire is about and what's all. So let's go in and jump into the tool here. So we're going to pop in here and go to KPI Fire. And so this is a fictitious company, Acme, and we'll use this site to look and track and manage those efforts. So first thing we want to do is begin with the end in mind, right? What do we mean by that? Right? So if we go to a report, and I'm just going to pull up one of my reports that I've saved here in my report out, and one of these reports is my benefits plan to budget. Now let's pull up our report. And this gives me a high-level view of how are we doing versus our budget in terms of the savings across projects. Now, what I say around this is begin with the end in mind. What does this mean? Well, when we start to structure and configure the environment, we want to break it down into organizational departments that we will hold accountable for certain targets or budgets or savings. And we'll be able to roll those up. So we want to have an idea when we're going in terms of whatever our department structure, in the way we want to report the savings that we produced. So we can either hold people accountable to those numbers and understand where we're exceeding expectations and where we're failing. Right? So with that, right, this is configured around different department structures here. Now what you're looking at in the report, what we see down at the bottom is this budget view. That gray bar represents the $1 million target or budget we have for the year. And many of our clients will have some type of, $10 million, $15 million savings target that they look at and say, that's our target or budgeted for. We don't know where we're going to get it yet, but that's what we're going to try to produce during a fiscal year. What we can see is that budget is broken up into $750 at the industrial group and $250 at the consumer group. So each group has its own target. And based on the size of the organization, based on the target that's there. Now what we can see is that the red bars mean that we've only identified 594 and we've only produced an actual 415. So we're in the red, we're well behind at the total level where it rolls up. And then the question remains is, where are we behind? And we can see that the industrial group is killing us. If I open up the Detroit and Salt Lake City plants, you can see they have their own individual targets and where they are in terms of benefits. So this is the end that we're looking to be able to report by department, by area, by group, but also be able to hold people accountable to those targets and report on that, right? So when we look at this type of report, a couple things with it as well. See this little filter icon up here at the top. I'm looking at this just at the total benefit, but that's made up of things like hard savings and costs, and we'll get into these account levels in a moment. Okay. So that's beginning with the end in mind in terms of configuration, so that we can get to this type of output report and we can say, hey, we've saved 594 this year versus our target. Now, what we're going to do is jump into a project, and I've already got this project up here that we've started, and this is this reduce defects on this XYZ product. And so this is a project summary page, right? The name of the project, the basic information about where it's being executed, the percent complete, etc. on this project. This is the charter tab, and it's explaining, hey, what's the opportunity? Every year we spend $20K on replacing customers that we've lost because they leave us. When we turn over our customers, we need to reduce that. We need to produce, product defects are driving these defections. Right? Now, as we look at this view, right, up at the top is the project benefits. We've recorded none of those savings at this point. But we're going to go through that. How do we record those savings? And these are the numbers that are going to roll up these project benefits. But here in this area here, this linked metrics is where we would define non-financial benefits. How does this help us drive things like the Net Promoter Score, right? That's a goal and a metric that we're tracking as an organization. That's the survey that we do, and right before, when we started, we were at 65, and we want to get to 70, and right now we've gone to 67. We've made 40% improvement in that metric. It's a non-financial metric. Now, things like customer satisfaction, it's tough. You can It's hard to roll up and say, here's how this project impacted it, but we can, sort of say where it was before and where it was after this project to say if there's some impact. And that's what that area is for, is to really show some non-financial link to your goals and metrics and things that you're tracking. Right? Okay. So, non-financial benefits. Let's go in and look at tracking our benefits. Right? So let's open up this and we open up our ad project benefits. And when we do this, first thing I want to do on this is, and I think is the way to go here, is to track benefits over multiple months. And if the savings start in January, right, and we want to count those all the way through December of next year, that's 12 months. That's sort of the annual value of this project. But if the project starts in June, right, we're going to start in June and go through May of next year, but only part of that, 6 months, is going to be applicable to this year's outcome. So first thing we do is say, hey, we're going to start this in November in terms of when our savings are going to be accrued. Right? The next thing is what are the saving benefit accounts? Right? So I say I want to go my hard savings and project costs. Now, real quick, what I want to do is go back to the deck and says, how do we track and manage these elements? So here's what I'm tracking. Total benefit is made up of hard savings and soft savings minus project cost. But you could configure it, hey, total benefit is really hard savings, but we need to know how much of that's fixed cost, how much of that is direct, and how much is inventory, how much is labor. Other clients, right? How much is it cost reduction and EBITDA gain? How much is ongoing and one-time expenses, amortized capital expenses? So all of these are what we call accounts. And what we try to say is keep it as simple as you can, and yet be able to answer when certain leadership groups or financial groups will say, well, how much of that is inventory? How much of that is labor reduction? Right? Well, I want to be able to answer that question, so we need accounts to be able to manage that. Right? This is, again, begin with the end in mind. If I know I'm going to get those questions, we need accounts around those to be able to track to that. Okay? So, back to where we were. My real simple hard savings, I don't have any sub items configured here. And then I just add those in, right? That little green button, if I add my savings in. Now, when we capture these savings, we could say, listen, I think that I can get 20 grand of savings, and it's a one-time savings target. I don't have to, I'm not going to record it over 12 months and just put it in the first month, and that's going to be the value of that project for this year. And I can put in my costs associated with it, right? When I put my costs in, it subtracts it from my total benefit. Costs can be used, right? I'm going to track how much investment am I making in this improvement. It might be some consultants you hire or whatever it might be that you want to net of the value of that project. Okay. But most of the cases, what we see is that those savings going over multiple years. So if I say, this is $1,000, per month, and I go in and say, well, I want to go $1,000 every month, and I can enter it there, or little pro tip here, I can open this up, grab that savings target, and drag it down through the total months. Now I get a visual, a cumulative number, right? So it should be $12,000 by the end of the year that this project is worth. Now what you'll note, only November and December, only $2,000 of it will show in this year's benefit, and the rest shows in next year, because that's when we accrue those benefits. Okay. So, exit. Right? We captured that savings, right? Once you've got the actuals, you would put actuals in the actual column. We also support a forecast view. I haven't turned it on here, but you can have a forecast as well. So as you're getting closer to an actual, you're forecasting what you think that number is. Okay. Now, down below as well, attachments. I might have a attachment, a document that says, here's where those numbers are coming from. And this is a good way of sort of providing some evidence into, right, well, if we're reducing this and that, and we're reducing defects, how did we come to the conclusion that it's going to save this as $12,000? Right? And that's an Excel file or something in order to capture that and make it visible to anyone who has access to that, can see that outcome. Now, key part of this as well would be avoiding what we call PPDs, PowerPoint dollars, right? And these can be toxic to your program. And let me explain that, what I'm talking about. So PowerPoint dollars, right? The project managers are under pressure to produce some savings on them, and so they oftentimes might put in exaggerated, a little overzealous numbers that you can't quite rely on, and what we call PPDs. It's based on some assumptions that aren't going to come true. I mean, that have never happened before, and so how are they going to happen now? That kind of thing, right? And so what we want to do is go through an approval process around these, so we can assure that it's not PPDs. Now, what happens? How can they become toxic? Let's say you go up and you run up your report and say, I've got this. We saved $10 million this year. One of the executives says, hey, yeah, that's great. Pull up a project. How about that one? Let's look at that one. Let's look at where those numbers came from. And they find out that it's all bullshit. That it's overzealous. Nobody's putting in, thinking around verifying these things, right? And all of a sudden now they're not going to believe anything that you're putting out there. That 12 million you said you saved, probably not, right? And that can put your whole project, your program in jeopardy in terms of support from leadership, et cetera. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this process. And what I've done is on my project, I've got my team, Randy, and I might have a financial rep or something like that who's responsible for. Michelle, in this case, is going to be my approver. She's the project sponsor on this project, right? So if I go back to that project benefit tab, down here in the bottom, what I do is I assign one of those team members, and in this case, I'm signing Michelle to verify these numbers. Right? Right now, it's in a to-do phase. Right? So as I'm getting closer to a review, right? I got some numbers in here. Over time, I would say, hey, well, at this point, it's pending approval. I want to move it to pending approval. Now, what happens is that Michelle's going to get a notification of that effort. Now, if I log in as Michelle, and she's in a different browser here, so this is her login here, and she's looking at this list of projects. These are all the projects that she belongs to as a sponsor, that she keeps her eyes on. She's filtered it, right? Saved this view so she sees it every time she logs in. And she can see that project up here at the top. Up here at in the little notification window, it says, Randy needs your approval on the project benefits for this task. Oh, well, if I just click on that, it's going to take me to that page. Now, I might open up that attachment to understand what those assumptions are. I could, from here, approve the entire thing all at once. Go in and say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and approve. I like all the numbers. It makes sense to me. I'm going to approve it. I'm not going to do that yet. I can go in each month and view not only all of the targets. If we look at the targets, I can say, yeah, I think those targets make sense, right? That those are reliable. And then I can go in and say, well, all we've got so far is 1 month, so I'm going to verify that number. Once we get a whole bunch of actuals in there, I can also use that approve all, right? Or I can do it a month at a time, which might mean, hey, well, if we get into March, April, and then all of a sudden I say, no, I'm not going to approve May, June yet. Anything from May on is not, something might change, and there's assumptions, I can't approve it yet. Okay. So that is the process for going through saving those targets, so that now that we know that hey, this is still a pending approval. If I want when I it stays in pending approval if I'm just approving a month at a time. But if I go ahead and approve the whole thing, right, it's going to show all of those approved. All right, let's check back. I'm going to go back to the deck. Oop. Let's see. Ooh, excuse me. When I find there it is. Okay, we talked about setting up the departments and the financial accounts, and this, we can record a single benefit. Hey, it's a one-time. It's just stick it in 1 month. We can do 12 months of annual benefit to get a total view of that project, and also record those non-financial type impacts on key goals or metrics that are associated in the area around PPDs. And that's really what we wanted to cover today. So I open it up to you guys. Are there questions? I see that no questions have come in as we were speaking. But let's pop in. You can go to the chat or that question box. Either way, I'll see either of those. Okay, no questions? Anything I say not make sense or is confusing? No clarification? Okay. All right. Well, that's great. I guess we'll end a little early with no questions, and I'll hold on here a couple minutes if you've got something that you want to type in. But otherwise, you guys all have a great afternoon. Thanks for coming.